So I know we will probably have a couple people pop in. I know 3:30 is usually the end of the day for some people, so we might see some more friends pop in, and that's just fine. But in the meantime, if you want to hop over to Padlet, we're going to do some interactivity in Padlet because unfortunately, you don't get to interact in a chat in a recording. So this was a more fun way to get to show you a couple things, but also interact over there as well. So we'll share the Padlet link with you in the chat, but as you can see, it's on the screen so that you putting it in there, Stacy, thank you, so that you can play along with us. So if you'll hop over on that Padlet, I know Stacy's dropping it in the chat link right now, and then use that very first column to answer this question about Rosie, the robot from Jetsons, because I really wish that I had a Rosie. And I think AI, we're somewhere close in terms of some productivity things we can do with it, but I would love Rosie the robot from the Jetsons. I wish that she rolled around my house and just served me food or hot chocolate or coffee when I need it, right out of her belly. But, here we are, alas, in 2024. We do not have Rosies rolling around yet. But I would love to know not only who you are joining us with that introduction, but tell us a little bit about like what is something you wish you could offload onto Rosie. Stacy, what would you offload onto a Rosie?
I've been thinking about this, and you really have me right now with the whole food thing because I just finished driving past every fast food restaurant on I-40, so I'm a little bit obsessed with food, but I already have a Roomba. I mean, it runs around my house. That's basically, a little round Rosie. We even named him. We named him Barney. I don't know. What else do we have here that we could do?
I think AI does some of the things, but I agree, like, cleaning the house, that's a nice thing. We have one of those Roombas too. They're fun, but it doesn't do a good enough job.
No, it doesn't do the deep clean thing. One thing that is super annoying that is another task that I had to do just before everybody came, we had a 24-pound turkey, and a lot of people came to the house to help me get rid of for the holidays, and so I found myself organizing unusual spaces in my house. So I think a robot that would just organize the junk drawer, organize the spice cabinet. Wouldn't that be super helpful? I think, because who wants to do that? Like nobody.
Exactly. So I know it's just 3 of us, which is okay. I know that this is, I think it was answered in the chat. So hi, thank you for putting it in Padlet. Do you feel comfortable introducing yourself and saying what yours was? I thought it was great, but for people watching the recording, they may enjoy getting to hear what you added.
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Yanawi Quinones, and I'm from Salem, Forsyth County Schools. Hi, Stacy. I am a DTL coach, and what I put was laundry, not just washing and drying, but folding and dressing me too. If I could just not have to think about that.
Would be great. That would be just, put your arms up and it just slides on an outfit of the day.
There you go.
I love it. I love it. Thank you for being here. Stacy says socks. You would.
I literally have a perpetual laundry basket of random socks.
Yep, they just pile up, So I do. I feel like there's a lot that we could get some benefit out of. And I feel like the food thing is a big part of it. But laundry and just the chores that I don't want to take the time to do would be amazing. So yeah, I agree with that. Thank you. And hello, Melissa. We're a small but mighty group today. So we just got started. And our first question was this one here about, remember Rosie from Jetsons. And my question is, if you could have a Rosie robot do whatever you needed it to do, what would your hack be? How would your robot help you? Oh, your mic is a little funny, so we can't hear you. So you might have to use the chat or hop over on Padlet, but it was kind of giving a weird reverb back. But we're going to show you a couple cool things that, again, it's not Rosie. There will be no delivery of hot cocoa in the belly or folding of socks, unfortunately, at this point. But we have figured out a couple cool things to do with AI. So we're going to do this, walk through this together, and it's going to be super personalized. I had originally done this where you could upvote and we could show you some things based on what you're interested in. But because, again, it's a small and mighty group, we might as well show you exactly what you're interested in. So over on that Padlet, I have a couple examples of some ways that AI can help hack communication, help hack with lesson planning, creation, so how to create things with AI, and then some ideas with some professional artifacts. So I figured we would just kind of move across the columns, and I will start by saying I haven't really even introduced myself yet, so I will do that, and then we will walk through some of these examples based on what you guys want to see. So my name is Molly Holloman. I don't even think I introduced myself in the last session, Stacy. I'm pretty sure I just rolled because I started seeing, well, I was in the column. I had added my information in the column, and we had about 30 people or so, and I would say all but maybe 3 were librarians in the morning session. So quite a few of us, so I already knew quite a few people in the room is what I'm trying to say. So it was kind of funny. I just skipped that part. But my name is Molly Holloman, and I am serving at DTL as the school library education consultant. And I am very firmly in the learner category of using AI for productivity. And part of the reason I pitched this specific session was so that it would force me to keep learning and to keep, kind of putting it in the forefront of what I'm doing. So over the last couple months since I proposed this, I've been trying to lean more on how do other people use it for productivity and how can I offload some of the things that I spend way too much time doing, and be able to use AI to help me with it. Now, I will also say that so if you're looking for the professional, that's Stacy. She's here to support and try to problem solve some things and share some of her own great productivity. But I am very comfortable and confident just saying that I'm not an expert in any of this. I'm learning it as I go. But I really have been trying to pay attention and ask my colleagues like Stacy and several others, like, how are you using this? Or, hey, I didn't know that I could do this, or I'm having a problem. How is AI helping you solve it? So a lot of what you're going to see is just stuff like that, stuff that I've heard from or tried to figure out on my own recently. And I would love to hear, from you too, if you have something that you want to share and pass along or model for us, that would be awesome. So this first one, Stacy, you want to introduce yourself, even though everybody and everywhere knows you in the AI world?
You're so sweet. I think you're being totally underselling that whole set of sentences that you said, because especially in the world of AI, everybody is a learner because it is changing so fast. And we were just talking about this. Every time we get in front of a new group of people or start talking about a new tool, it just seems like we discover just new ways of using it, and people are just so creative with it. So I learn something from you every time we're together, either in person or virtually. So I'm really excited to be here in this session with you. So I'm Stacy Lovedahl, and I have been working with Molly for years. I have a little sticky note on the wall over here about how long. I know, 5 is crazy. I know. So workiversary coming up. So, and I'm the Western DTL consultant and a former middle school science teacher. I was just in a middle school today, twice in 1 week. Middle schoolers are so cool, and it's December, so they're beside themselves right now. It was fun to be around all that energy, and yeah, I can't wait to get started to hear all the ways we're going to use AI today.
Cool. Thank you. I'm glad you're here. Okay, so a couple examples I want to show you in this communication one, but if either of you have any hacks that you want to add or things that you want to discuss when it comes to communication, that's what we're here to do and to show you. So you can either add that as a link, like you could add the plus sign and it will add down here. Or if there's one that you definitely want to talk about, like just be kind of previewing these and let us know which ones we want to go through. But I wanted to show two that I think are very helpful and that have recently helped me. One of them is analyzing feedback. So I just was at NCAT a couple weeks ago and led a seminar with two of my library friends, Meredith and Gabriel, and we got our whole list of feedback. So I think we had like 29 people at this session. So we had, pieces of data, including long text, right? You give answers through different responses that are text responses as well. And I have spent hours poring over some of that just to know what is being said and, what was working. But I think a big part of it is, you can get a little lost only reading specific questions, and maybe you miss some of like the big picture things. You might miss patterns and themes. So what Meredith did was she made a PDF of it, and she went into ChatGPT, I think. Hang on, I have it open over here. She went into ChatGPT. Oh, I don't have it. Hang on. And she asked it to, it was Claude actually. She asked it to you go through and review. I think I have it. Sorry. Here we go. So you just add the PDF, and she asked it the following prompt. Please analyze this feedback. Tell me any key takeaways, including things that were strengths and things that could be improved. And in a matter of seconds, it pulled everything together. It gave us, bulleted list of what are some common themes. What did people say that worked really well? What were some areas for improvement? And then she even asked it like specifically, what are some things that Molly did well and some things Molly could do for improvement? What were some things that Meredith did well and Meredith could do for improvement? So even though people didn't necessarily respond in those ways for us specifically, if they mentioned us, ChatGPT went in and kind of sorted through and saw what each of us could specifically continue doing and what we could do differently. So I loved that because I think sometimes we, again, get a little lost in feedback like that. So that could be feedback for an event. So Audrey just joined us, and I do some webinars with Audrey. So I would love to practice that hack that Meredith just taught me by uploading some of our feedback from our virtual webinars and see what people think. And, I think it's just a different way to use a lens because we can get a little emotionally drawn to certain responses, right? If I read one negative, all those positives just kind of go away, right? So it's helpful to have that filter of AI that can help you analyze and summarize it. So that was helpful. And then another just kind of communication thing that I have used recently that has helpful, and two different consultants from our team also mentioned this as well. Kathy Parker and Lauren Boucher are using different LLMs to analyze images, to read an image, and to write alt text. That can be a very daunting task for people who create a lot of slide decks or newsletters or things like that, to make it accessible. But that is a huge time saver because I can't tell you how many times I will spend trying to write descriptions. And after you do like 7, 8 of these images, your brain just kind of goes, bleh. So you can use Canva Magic. So if you are a Canva user pretty regularly for things, it will actually auto start. Like you can use AI to write it in that image. So in a graphic or in an image that you pull right from Canva, you can click on it and it will show you, I think I don't have Canva open right now, but it will magic write for you. And then you could just edit. Like if it doesn't give enough specifics or you want to add or change something, you can just change it right there in the edit field. But it also can do things like I have Gemini up right here. And here's my little friend. This is my image. So I'll show you in a minute how I generated this image, but I said, can you write a brief description that I can use for alt text? So really specific, short and sweet ones, or a ginger cat wearing an astronaut helmet and a spacesuit floating in space with Earth and the moon in the background. So it will do the magic for you, which is pretty helpful. Kind of fun, kind of different, but I I love that. And Audrey, I feel like that's going to be a good one for you too, with all of that newsletter writing that you do. All right. Any questions? Any thoughts? Audrey, I heard you unmute.
Yeah.
We're going to play. Audrey and I need some time to play in Canva. We will. Don't worry.
Yes.
And now you already have one new hack. All right. So feedback we've talked about. This is another way we could do feedback would be if you ask it to write a lot. I do some grading, and I'll tell you it takes some time to write constructive feedback or positive feedback even without feeling like you're super repetitive. So now I've started to do this where I will put the rubric or the description of the activity into an LLM and say, can you give me 10 pieces of constructive feedback and 10 statements of successfully meeting the criteria? And that way I just have something to start with for consistency. Just a little bit of offloading the brain power. All right. Any of these examples that you want to talk about? Okay.
So I put a note in the on the first one for the feedback for analyzing your feedback from a workshop, but I could see using that same idea in a classroom. I'm not quite sure what the fastest way to do it would be, but you know how you get exit tickets at the end of the day, and lots of times they're on pieces of paper. They might be a note card or something, and you just put it in the basket on the way out the door. So one way to do it might be to just really quick take a picture of everything right inside the AI app, and that would upload it, and it can read the pictures and then analyze the feedback. ChatGPT is really good at analyzing pictures, text from pictures. So that might be one way to do it. And then another way to do it would be maybe if you had feedback that was in, a Google Doc or something, would be to upload it that way. But either way, you could get kids, you could analyze kids' feedback that way. Because again, it's sort of similar, especially if you've got a lot of students or it's, 4 class periods or whatever, you tend to focus on, certain sets of sentences versus others. And it would be a way to analyze trends, be more even-handed about what you're looking at, look at similarities between all the classes, maybe look and see if there's a difference between the beginning of the day versus the end of the day, differences between, girls versus boys, whether one lesson turned out really well versus another. I've got a bias towards hands-on learning. I think it's all the things, but maybe it's not. Maybe that's just me. So you really could just start asking questions of your data.
Absolutely. That points towards this last one too about meeting notes. And I have to point out, we actually have an Otter AI that is here in our meeting right now. And so that tends to be where people are seeing that note taking can happen really easily. But if you didn't know, there's AI integration now in pretty much any platform. So if you're on Zoom and you haven't played with your settings in a while, you can actually turn on an AI assistant in your meetings. I've used that a few times and it's pretty amazing what it will pop out. Like I used to take pretty good notes about meetings, about what are things that I need to walk away with before I jump into the next meeting. And now it will do it automatically for you. And I understand that I think Google Meet has Gemini as that integration as well. So those are a couple good things. But back to Stacy's point about the exit tickets, if you are a handwritten note person and you do not like having a digital note-taking thing happening at the same time, Gemini, ChatGPT, they know how to read sticky notes. They know how to read chart paper. So even if it's different people's handwritings and they're in all different directions, you can take a picture of it, put it in something like Gemini and ask it to summarize chart paper that might be used across the room. So I think as a DTL coach, right, you probably do things like that all the time. That's a great way where you can do exactly like Stacy said, where you can synthesize what people wrote about on a piece of chart paper, which is pretty crazy, really cool.
So how do you do that? I mean, now I have been in meetings before, and I've seen Stacy say that she'll have it, have it on. So where do you turn it, like if you were in a Zoom meeting, where do you turn it on?
So in your settings, since I'm in Teams, I can't do that in here, but I'll see if I can actually look it up really quick. I think it's called AI Assistant.
Mm-hmm.
Meet Zoom's AI Companion. And so it has done what it does when I have used it before is you have to turn it on, right? It doesn't just happen. But if you turn it on in your meeting, it will capture, it'll be like, because your name, like right now I can see Audrey Long, I can see Stacy Lovedoll, right? I can see all of our names. So the AI in Zoom and in Meet will know that Stacy said blah blah blah. Audrey contributed da 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 da. Audrey said she left before she before she left the meeting, she said she would send this email, da da da. So it will make a bulleted list, not only of who said what, but also will say like these were some of the tasks that were delegated in that meeting. So it's something that you would do again in your settings. And if you want some help with it, I can certainly keep looking. But that's all I did. I just went into my Zoom settings. The last time I was using Zoom, I played with the settings of the meeting and I opted to turn it on. And just like when you record a meeting, it notifies people that the AI note taker is being used.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yep. So some things to try out. And let us know how it goes if you do try the hack of doing some note taking and taking pictures. I think that's actually really cool. The first time I saw it, my mind was blown. I was like, I didn't even know you could do that it could read handwriting on a picture of chart paper. Like that's so cool. So something to think about. And then also if you're just a handwritten person, I used to have those, I have one and Stacy does too. I know those notebooks that you can handwrite and then like it turns it into a PDF. Like,
oh yeah.
You don't even have to do that anymore. You can, and Audrey, I know you're a handwritten note taker. So
you
can even do things like that in a meeting, right? And you could take a picture of it and ask, ChatGPT or ask Gemini to make a summary of all of your notes that you wrote in your notebook. It's very cool.
Oh, okay.
All right, so those are some of our communication ones. And anything we didn't talk about, I at least tried to put a little context in that column. So hopefully it would be helpful if it's something you wanted to dig into a little bit further. But let's talk about lesson planning. This is probably my favorite hack right now, and it's not new, right? But a lot of times it's new to people if you haven't heard it yet. It's pretty much a game changer. I was not a classroom teacher before I became a librarian. So when I entered a K-5 school, I had no idea how to standards align what I was doing in the library to what a fourth grade teacher was doing in social studies because I wasn't a fourth grade teacher. And so I spent so much time poring over. I had one big binder. I had all the grade levels. I had PDFs printed out of every content area. And I would just flip through them and I would try to be prepared to explain, how this was standards aligned. And I can't tell you how much time I spent doing that. And now, beautiful thing about all of these LLMs is they do know our standards, right? So you can just say aligned to North Carolina standard. You could pick an age group. You can pick a specific age level. Or if you want it to, kind of be really, either really specific or a broad range, it can do both. So it does know our standard course of study. It also knows the ISTE and digital learning standards for North Carolina. If it is a little wonky, one thing that you can do is start your prompt with saying, when I say digital learning standards, I'm referring to, and then copy and paste the ISTE standards, and then start asking it, how is this aligned to, et cetera, et cetera. So, again, I put some of the standards that I typically would work to align to, but there might be additional ones, that you would want to include. Maybe you have some interesting literacy standards, for example, that you're working on as a district, and that could be something that you add as well. Yes. Do you have a question or do you want to contribute?
A little bit of both.
Okay, good. Bring it on.
One of my questions is, I wondered if, because I was trying this out actually pretty recently with standards aligning for the extended course of study, because we have one of our schools that's all they do. They're a school that just focuses on working with the students with the more severe cognitive disabilities, but trying to, still align it with that. And I felt like I was having a little bit of trouble with that, and even like myself just kind of trying to find the standard itself and then pull it. I was having a little trouble. So I just wondered if you had any recommendations for that. And I will say one thing I did have success with, the school that I'm working with, they use a program that I had never heard of before. Most of my experience was all just traditional school and secondary, but they use something called the Stiers Fitzgerald program to, it's the way that it was described to me was it focuses on things that are tied to like for example, what was it called? I guess like I know one of the lessons that could be pulled from it was like about community. They have like thematic units, and like one of them was about community helpers. And it knew that, and I was able to learn actually about that, even though I have no, like I said, I have no knowledge myself on that sort of curriculum. I did find that it knew that, and it helped me a lot with being able to provide some suggestions for using AI tools to help with that sort of thing.
That is really interesting. So I think it goes back to that, like what data has it been trained on, right? Because that it clearly had that information accessible in its data, which I think is interesting. But for a while, when I would type in North Carolina Portrait of a Graduate, it was pulling Portrait of a Graduate language from somewhere, but it wasn't North Carolina's Portrait of a Graduate, even though I was being specific and saying the North Carolina Portrait of a Graduate. So it just kind of goes to show like that was still relatively new. I think this was, earlier in 2024 when I was doing that. It has since been updated because I think there's enough of us that have been trying to do that. So I think that's with the extended standards, and I want Stacy, you to probably lean in on this too, but what it makes me think of would be, could she create a custom GPT with that being source material? I know you're going to say Notebook LM because that would be a genius way for her to do it. But do you have any thoughts about that?
So, well, my first question is, were you using ChatGPT or were you using Magic School, or what were you using?
So far, I had just tried out with ChatGPT. It was like a first initial run. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it was recently?
Yes.
Relatively, yeah. So I feel like a lot of times when I'm doing something, and especially when it's fairly specialized, like that's fairly specialized versus like the North Carolina Standard Course of Study, like a direct standard, or is I ask it what it knows about it first to get it to tell me what it thinks I mean, because sometimes I found the same thing, like what I think it thinks and what it thinks are not always exactly the same. And even now that is, where we have access even without paying to 4.0 rather than 3.5 or 3, and it's definitely been upgraded and it's much more powerful, like by orders of magnitude more powerful than it was in the beginning. But I'll ask it what it knows. But then, just to be sure, I default to pasting in the direct standard just to make sure that we're on the same page. Yeah, because a lot of times it's, we have enough similarities between things that it can, if it's in, I've even heard ELA teachers who will say that even though North Carolina Standard Course of Study is, that it's fairly good at it, that some of our ELA standards, North Carolina has enough specificity in some of the substandards that, that ELA coaches can find some discrepancies.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah. So and it's just one of those things where when we say AI and and we worry about, AI replacing teachers, there's, we have that content knowledge that it takes our eyeballs to make sure that it's getting it right.
And that's one of the things that stood out to me, because I felt like when I was trying out the different things with, and like I said, it was like a first run, just trying it to see what it would come up with. I felt like it was still just focusing more on just the standard course of study and not the difference. But yeah, thank you. I didn't even think of asking it like what it knew of something first. That would really be helpful.
It is. I think sometimes we have to, like I was saying this earlier too, we have to remember like that you can chat with it, right? Like we still, like we're still so Google trained that we think we should ask and you shall receive, instead of chatting and manipulating and kind of, I love Stacy's idea of kind of like almost getting that background, taking a few steps backwards first. So that's a really good thing. Are you familiar with Notebook LM? Have you used that at all?
I've heard and I'm familiar with it, but I haven't like tested it out myself or made anything with it yet.
Let me show you the quickest example while you two were talking. And this is me as a learner. Okay. Stacy will say over and over, Molly, have you tried this? Molly, have you put it? Because there's so many cool things to do. So this is me showing you like this. I am at this level. I am like maybe 2 steps ahead of you, but not 3. So I downloaded 2 things to show you. I downloaded the extended course of study for North Carolina, ELA K-12 is the one that I just downloaded, and then the Portrait of a Graduate PDF. So while you were chatting on another window, I just pulled that up. So I'm going to upload my source material, okay, which I just downloaded these 2 items, right? And now, once it's loaded, do you see it's loading up here? So it's pulling both the Portrait of a Graduate and the ELA extended course of study, and immediately it pulls up this notebook guide. Okay. So unlike ChatGPT or Gemini or any of those big LLMs, I just chose the data that it's going to pull on. So I picked the source material and it's only these 2 things. So when I say standard course of study, it's not pulling from whatever data anywhere. It's just pulling from this one PDF. Okay. And if I don't want Portrait of a Graduate, I just uncheck it. Okay, and now it's not going to pull any information from Portrait of a Graduate. So instead, I'm getting a summary of what these extended course study, overall is. I think it's actually kind of cool that it will give you some things like you can play with it quite a bit, but you can start asking it a question. So what question might we want to ask? What question do you have for it?
Like one thing was how I could simplify a lesson. I think it was dealing with main ideas in a text, or how I could modify. I can't remember exactly. I'm trying to look for my prompt here that I had earlier. Or maybe it was creating visual aids, because I know I was trying to also kind of incorporate that about like how I can modify and simplify a lesson for main ideas in a text and provide visual aids, something like that.
So I'm giving it this really general thing, but remember, you need to engage a little bit, right?
Yeah,
so it's giving me big picture, right? Stacy, were you going to add something?
Oh yeah, because this is K-12, so and then you could add in, since that's the whole entire K-12, right? You could add in the specific standard, and it would, and it would go right to that specific standard.
Yeah. So like if I had like the 7th grade one, I can't remember the numbers because the English wasn't what I had taught. It was social studies, but I know it was something like 7th grade, and it was about main ideas in a text. I know those were like the keywords in it.
Okay, so I was on mute, so you didn't have to hear me clacking away. So I went in, I said, can you modify this for, and then I just gave RI.7.2, right? So here it's again, my source material is getting more specific, right? So same thing, I didn't do anything with Portrait of a Graduate here. I am just looking at modifying it for this specific standard, right? Which is determining central ideas or themes of a text to analyze their development, summarize key supporting details and ideas. So here it's doing that for you, right? It's pulling the text, the language right from those standards and telling you, here's an example for teaching the American Revolution, right? 2 central ideas: colonists were unhappy with British rule, colonists decided to declare their independence. Here's how to paraphrase, here's how to summarize, and here's how you could create a graphic organizer. Remember, this isn't going to create visual support for you because Notebook LM can't do that yet. But you could, now that you have some more specific ideas, right? You could then go over into another LM or LLM that does create visuals, and you would have this to kind of go off of. Does that make sense? Okay.
Yes, it does. That's very helpful.
Cool. And if you notice, it's only doing 1 and 2, but if you added a bunch of different sources, if I click on this 2, it's actually telling me right here where it's pulling that information from, okay? And if I click on 1, it's going to jump up to another citation for where it's pulling this information from. So it's pretty cool. Shows you some good stuff. And then you would be able to add like portrait of a graduate. So I could also say, can you use this activity and include portrait, or wait, include alignment to, just because I like empathy. So, let's go with empathy, but you could pick another one. You could do critical thinking. You could do, learner's mindset, all kinds of stuff. You could even say, here's an activity I'm thinking about doing. Does this align well to copy paste the standard? And what portrait of a graduate durable skills does it address? And so it will give you, here's how to modify this activity and pull in the skill, durable skill of empathy. So, again, you've got a lot that you can do with just these 2 source materials. This is not, everything around LLM. If you have an article, maybe you're doing some things about poetry and you want to upload a couple poems and ask it to include reference to these poems or whatever. So there's a lot of cool things I think you could keep adding to this. But I also like that you can make it very narrow. I just want to engage with questions about this one piece of information. All right.
Yes, that's very helpful. Thank you.
Good. I'm glad. That's what we're here for. And hopefully everybody else, you can see, you ask us questions, we will play. We will play and figure it out. So don't hesitate if there's something we can do to help, or dig into a little bit more. That's what this is about. So I added this video. We're not going to show it right now, but if you want to come back and see what it looks like to do some standard alignment, there's a video that's there for you. Included also a prompt for like this UN sustainability goals. That might be something that you would want to align with. So just some things to play with. So other lesson planning productivity hacks, one of the best ones is rubrics. I mean, you can do this on really any LLM, including Magic School. But another, like taking that a step further, would be if it's a lot to grade. And so if you want to turn something into a single point rubric, you can start with a rubric, right? And bring it down to a single point rubric, would be a really interesting step I would share with teachers. Scaffolding, there's some good resources and things there, including how to make things like choice boards for UDL using a couple different tools. So that's something I would recommend. And I wanted to share too an exemplar. So earlier today I did one of these webinars on research and media literacy, and I was able to just use Raina in Magic School. So sometimes it feels even overwhelming now to go in Magic School because there's so many buttons to push, right? So many things that you can do. And it's often faster for me to just hop in and ask Raina for help. And usually that's a helpful way to kind of create some things that quickly I can transfer right over to Google. So the reason I did that was because I know that not everybody, when they're at school, might be able to open any generative AI. And so I wanted people to be able to engage with this without being able to have access to AI. So it can be that fast, and then it's right there in Google Docs for you. So the whole chat that I had to be able to create those exemplars were made in Raina, then transferred over to Google Docs. So just kind of one of those helpful things to think about too. All right, anything on lesson planning that we want to talk about before we move on to creation? We're good? Okay. I also used, just to be totally honest with you all, I used ChatGPT, Claude, a couple different ones just to play with the idea of both webinars that were today, because it feels overwhelming sometimes using these tools just to kind of get your ideas from broad to more specific. It's a helpful, sometimes I can get Stacy on the phone to do that with me, and sometimes Stacy is on the other side of a mountain and she doesn't have service, and so I need a chat to talk to me instead. All right, so let's talk through a couple creation hacks, and then we'll see if you have anything else you want to talk about with these. So I've had a lot of fun with generating images, and I'm constantly branching out. Like I said earlier, I was very comfortable for a long time using Canva Magic Media. That was like my go-to. If I'm going to create it, this is where I'm going to go. And I've started branching out a little bit. And that was where you saw Captain Whiskers. So this where he has a name, in case you're wondering. It is Captain Whiskers. And we wrote the alt text earlier for Captain Whiskers, but where I got the text was Lindsay Sipe did this great webinar through this series about reaching every reader. And so I created a story using one of her prompts. And the story started with deep in space, aboard the shimmering starship Orion, Captain Whiskers, a clever orange tabby cat, purred contentedly. So I literally copied and pasted this whole right here, this part, and I put it in Adobe Express. So Adobe Express is actually it's integrated in a lot of the resources you might use, like Magic School. There's image creation in Magic School, and as I told Stacy, I was like, it feels new, but it's been out since spring, so newish. But it's using the exact same tool. It's just not as big and robust as what you see right here. So I'm literally just going to put this description in generating image using Adobe Express. Okay, and I'm going to choose digital art, and we're just going to kind of see. We'll do graphic and see what pops up. So it's taking my description and it's going to create that orange space cat. And there's all kinds of things that you can do in Adobe. I've learned how to animate it. And again, like I said at the very beginning, I'm like 1 or 2 steps. I'm really not, if you asked me how to do something in Adobe, I probably wouldn't have an answer for you right now. But all I did was a couple description sentences from the opening of my story. And here is Captain Whiskers in a whole new look. Right? A little different. Now, one thing that's a bummer, and again, this is why we chat with it, is it's missing. Don't know if you noticed, but this would be one of those really fun activities to talk to students about, like what's missing from our prompt. So when we copied over the story, it did say a clever orange tabby cat. So I see all 4 of these are tabby cats. It is in a spacesuit. It is floating. So all of these things are correct so far, but his loyal companion Gizmo, a floating robot with bright blue eyes and a knack for fixing things, is not hovering in any of these pictures, right? So this might be one of those things that we go back and work on our writing. But if I were to spend time searching the internet for high quality image of a space tabby cat, I'm probably not going to find it, right? And so this is where, to me, it is a helpful hack. I spend way too much time. I'm like the deep dive kind of person where I won't give up until I find what I'm looking for. And so instead, I've started doing this. If there's something specific I can't find in Canva or that, is under Creative Commons, I've started to generate them. And that's been a lot of fun, but it's also been really good practice and kind of helps me generate some ideas too of like, how would I use this with creative writing, or how would I use this, in a lot of different contexts. So generated images, lots of fun. And it can, here was a little mashup of AI plus AI to turn into something kind of cool and different. So that's Adobe. But again, you can do some different things in different platforms. If you want to try this, if you haven't played with it, I would hit the plus sign here. And if you look at these magic stars in Padlet, you can tune me out for a second. It's okay if you need to do this, and it's the end of the day. And if you would like to practice doing some prompt writing, you can, and it will actually it will generate an image and it will drop it at the bottom of this column. So if you want to take a minute to play and create something on your own, you certainly can. And then another generation thing that I, again, just recently learned, saved me hours and hours. I would not have known to even do this. Was again, Lindsay to the rescue. And I give so many people on our team credit because I know she's not the first person on the team to do it, but she was the one that came to save the day that I asked for this help. Was she sent over I knew that she knew a couple things about Google Sheets, and I don't know the first thing about Google Sheets other than I can highlight and I can hide a column. I'm really good at those things. I'm not so good at sorting the data to do what I wanted it to do. And what I needed was way more complex. what I'd ever been familiar with before. So I reached out to Lindsay, and instead of talking me through it, Lindsay did this. She actually sent me her chat. So if you have friends like I have Stacy, and I have a lot of other friends on this team that are willing to share what they did, you can share your chat pretty easily. So I'm going to go to the bottom here just to you can share your chat. So what I could see was Lindsay literally started with, can you create a formula that anytime there's a comma, it will split the text before and after the comma into another cell. So then she got into the specifics about what specific cells, what column, and then here it will guide you through exactly how to do this and where to copy the code. And then it didn't do what we needed it to do. So then I said, I forgot to mention it's taking information from column E. I know you need to see the spreadsheet to understand, but I just want to show you that this is what it means to ask it over and over until it finally can get it to do what you want it to do. And so then it's like, okay, that worked except for da 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 da, right? So I think it's important just to know that it does take some time. It's not going to be an instantaneous result, but these are the kinds of time savers that I think, asking people who have done it and doing this, it was so helpful for me to see the actual conversation, so that when I opened up a new tab and I started having my chat with ChatGPT about it, I could see the back and forth, and I could know how to prompt back and forth. So don't be afraid to use it for things like I told Stacy earlier. I was like, if you would have told me that coding was something that I could do, I would be like, nah, I don't need to code. There is no coding in my world, unless we're talking about coding genres in a library. Then sure, send me in. But this was very cool. This was a really neat thing. And then getting to kind of play with it a little bit and know how it works. I felt like a magician, not not that I really understand the back and forth. But a couple people that I've worked closely with now can easily show me how to do it, which means anybody can learn how to do it.
So explain it again, Molly, what you did.
Sure. So I had a Google spreadsheet, and I would show it, but it does have some information that I probably shouldn't show.
Right.
So people signed up for something, and I was like overwhelmed. It was for the library, supporting libraries in Western North Carolina. It had, I'm willing to help during these months. I'm willing to help this way. I can't help at this time. And it was just too much information for me to manually be like, like who, when, what, where, why, how, like all those things was too much. Right. So I needed to filter it through somebody else. And so I showed Lindsay, and she said, we just need to split the columns so that it can sort by these people will help in November and December. These people will help in January. These people will help in February. And I was like, cool. So we went into ChatGPT and said, can you create a code? So you can see, can you create a formula that when there's a comma, it will split the text. So it just looked at one column. And I can show you this a little bit more later too, Audrey, but it just split that one column. Okay. So that anything that had a comma, January, comma, February, comma, now I was getting a January column, a February column, like that's how it was split. Yeah. Okay. And then it told me how to copy and paste. Okay. It even showed me how to copy and paste into, I'll show you right here, using Google Script, which I had never heard of before. Here's how you can write the script to split it. Open your Google Sheet, go to extensions, delete any code in the editor, and then copy code. Okay, so it literally walks you step by step how to do some of these really complex things that I didn't know I could do. So I'd be happy to practice it with you one of these days, Audrey.
Okay.
It's good practice for me too.
Yeah, okay.
So that was pretty neat. And like I said, to me, it's a big thing of just seeing how somebody else has done it and then trying to replicate it.
Yeah.
So, okay, so that's some of the creation hacks. There's a few more down there. And I think I agree with you about breakouts. I love Breakout EDU. It's so much fun, but it is a lot of work. Also a lot of work. So being able to kind of so you can do, Magic School has some gamification resources. Eduate is another one that has gamification built into it, but you can also ask, like, go into ChatGPT, Claude, whatever is one of your favorites, and say, I'm trying to do a breakout on blah blah blah. I need codes for, 5-digit code for this, or a 3-number code that would tie into this, right? And so it will help you with a lot of those things. Saves a lot of time. Can still be creative, right? It still takes you as the human to power and think through it. But yes, there's some really great things in there. So, yay, look at you. I love it. Added the assistant in. Yay. Thank you for making sure Gizmo was there in space. All right. With our last few minutes left, I have some professional artifacts to talk about. And then while I'm kind of wrapping this up, if you have a favorite tool that you like to use, you can certainly add it in this column. Or if you have any more resources that you think are great to share, then by all means, feel free to hit the plus sign and add to that. So, but the couple quick professional artifacts that I wanted to show, this one's a video. I used Claude to do this. And the video's in there so you can kind of come back to this. But what I asked it to do was I asked it for alignment to those standards. Like I said, I described an activity and I knew I was working with 3rd graders and I wanted it to be aligned to, not just standard course of study, but I was doing this with an art teacher. So I asked for art standards as well. And so I had already done that and Claude knew a little bit about it. And then what you're noticing is right here, I added the PDF of my evaluation instrument. And so it already knew about the activity, and I said, can you align this with the evaluation instrument for North Carolina School Library Media Coordinators? And boom, standard 1, here's how I'm meeting element B. Standard 2, here's how it met element A. And so again, I think of all the time that I would spend before my being observed, I would spend so much time trying to figure out how to talk about some of the things that I had done and where does it align. And instead, I could probably take 10 minutes to just go through, an LLM and explain different ways that I have been doing things and asking, here's my rubric. Can you align all of this to my rubric? And you're done in a matter of moments, which is pretty cool. So helpful hack. And then another great couple things to think about is like your PDPs. Typically mid-year PDPs are due about this time. So how might you say, here's my PDP, here's some things that I've done, get a quick summary so that you can pop that in there. And then, ask it to tell you what are some things that you can do to meet that goal by the end of the year. So where have you not met it and what are some strategies to help meet that goal? Could be helpful. And then this was another idea that came to me recently from a friend was if you're applying for a position, being able to use just like you do with your professional artifact, you could upload your CV or you could upload the description of the job and ask it to find ways, what are some talking points that I should bring into this meeting or this interview to explain how I'm qualified for this role, right? I think that could be kind of a very cool and helpful way to prepare yourself for an interview or, work on cover letters, those things. So a lot of us think sometimes about the lesson planning side, but then, there's a lot of things that we can do as professionals as well that I think are helpful. So those are a couple ideas in here for professional artifacts. And then lastly, we have, I just got started with tools, because if you haven't played with Goblin tools, it looks a little different than most because it's supposed to help you not feel overwhelmed by using some of these resources. So Goblin Tools was actually built for people that are neurodivergent and being able to kind of simplify it and break things down. Okay, so that was what I was playing with the other day, but there's a couple things that you can do like formalizer. So turn your chaotic thoughts into classy ones. So that is one that I've had to use before where I'm like, I have this idea for a session and this is all the things I want to accomplish. How can I make it sound more streamlined, right? So you can make it more professional, less snarky is kind of a fun one. If you have some feelings going on, that's a really helpful one to maybe polish up that email before you send it off. So there's some really fun things to play with in here. And Stacy, I know that you said recently that you were reading and you've been playing with it, but that you've also read a little something. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, so their Facebook page is really amazing. They spend some time sharing, just ways to use it, and then, they show you, they actually type something in. One was clean, like if you type in the estimator, like how long is this going to take, and like type in clean my room. Like if you're a middle school, student, right? And your mom says you have to clean your room, and then and you click go. It's going to take 1 to 2 hours. So that's the amount of spiciness. So that's how you're broken down. It's going to tell you. So how hard is it going to be for you? So you can change like how much detail it's going to give you. So, and then it'll estimate it, either it'll give you more or less amount of information. So, and you can start getting it to tell you, it'll break it down into all the different steps, or it'll reduce the amount of steps. And it just gives you, it'll just break it down more or less. And then on their Facebook page, the other thing that it does is they'll give you kind of the information behind the scenes about why they what they put into the research behind their tool. And I just found some of their articles really interesting too. So I think their Facebook page is pretty interesting. They probably post it on Instagram too. They probably have a TikTok. You could probably spend all of your life on social media.
You probably could, which is like ironic because Goblin Tools is supposed to help you not be sucked in.
Exactly. There could probably be a whole webinar just about that.
Right. It'll take 1 to 3 hours depending on how much time you get sucked into TikTok or Reels while you're also cleaning your room. I asked it recently about like I said, I have to plan a 1 hour session that involves games. Like I had a couple things and it was like 7 to 8 hours. I was like, probably accurate. Yes, that 1 hour session that I have planned will probably take me 7 to 8 hours because of all the rabbit holes I'll go down. So it is fun. There, and again, I just wanted to show it because it simplifies a lot of it. Could you use a lot of these for in other LLMs? Yes, you could. You absolutely could brain dump and say, how long is it going to take me to pull this together? You certainly can. And this is a fun one too. So if you are going, okay, yeah, productivity, all that's good stuff, but what am I going to eat for dinner now that we've been talking about AI for, this long? You can literally just dump your ingredients that you have in your refrigerator. Say, I only want to use my microwave. What can I make? And it will suggest it for you. So I felt like that was a good note to end on because I hate that question at the end of the day is like, what am I now going to make for dinner? Well, it's whatever I can pull out of the fridge and warm up quickly. So, this helps with some more creativity. And just kind of goes back to that idea of like, it doesn't have to be super complicated. Coding your spreadsheet feels like a lot. Reading your refrigerator and turning it into something edible is a little bit easier. So Goblin Tools for the win in my book for that right there. So if you have things that you would like to add that you're using that you really like, we would love to see those get added to Padlet. But, again, we know that this was going to be one of those mix of some people can watch the recording, some people will be here live. So wanted to feel engaging on both ends. And then there's a couple of resources just there at the end if you need a little bit more support and help in terms of what do I prompt? What do I get started with? So
does anybody have anything new and different that they've been using that you want to add or give a shout out to?
But that's what I came here for, so that I can learn all of the new stuff that's
I'm
out
glad,
there,
Audrey.
so I can start using it.
Well, we're gonna play together a little bit more. I know you and I have talked about a couple things that we need to get into, so we will.
Yeah.
You'll have something to add to that list. I promise.
I put the feedback form in the chat. So if you fill that out, that'll send you your CEUs and or your participation form. But also we would love to obviously hear your feedback, but there's a question on there about what topics you would like to hear for webinars in the future. We love that column. So definitely add your thoughts in there.
Yes, because like I said, this one I came up with just because I needed to put practice in myself. So that's where this topic came from, was Molly needed to learn and pay attention. So but thank you for being here. I appreciate everyone coming, and your contributions were amazing and helpful, and very much wanted this to feel somewhat personalized. So thank you for doing that.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. I enjoyed it.
Thanks, Audrey.
You're welcome.